Now the feeling behind this is we're looking at 3 different types of animation: jumping, spinning, and fading, just something that works with this title. So the idea here is that we're going to make the first word here jump around, the individual characters move around independently of each other. The second one, the characters will rotate back and forth almost as if they're slightly spinning. And then the third one over here will adjust the color over time so it fades in and out from perhaps blue to white and back again, but randomly. So this is going to involve a fair amount of animation, but it's all going to be done on one line of type using a series of animators. So let's give that a try. Let's come down to the timeline and select layer number 1. This is our jump, spin, fade title. And let's twirl down the options there and just open up the animate function on the right hand side next to text and choose the first property that we're going to animate. In this case, we're going to do position first, so go ahead and select that. And then under animator 1, which has just appeared, we want it to animate randomly around the position property. So let's go ahead and add a selector and choose a wiggly selector. Now this means that any changes we make to the position property will be affected randomly, individually, character by character. So the position property is divided into 2 different values, the X and the Y position. So we're just going to adjust the Y-axis by dragging on that slightly, maybe up to around 30 pixels difference, and you'll see that all of the characters have now shifted off their baseline. Well, if you go ahead and scrub through the timeline, you can see that the wiggler is also animating that for us. We haven't had to put any keyframes in here. The wiggler is taking care of it. Now, the problem here is that it's affecting every single character. So what we want to do is to adjust the range selector so it only highlights the word jump. Now, there's 2 ways we can do that. If you come down to the timeline and underneath animator 1, twirl open the range selector 1 option, and you'll see that there is a start point set to 0 and an end point set to 100%. Well, this tells us that 100% or every single character in this block of text is selected and therefore is being affected. So we could adjust these values if we wanted to, but working on a percentage isn't always the best idea when you're trying to look at something very precise, like a certain number of characters as we are in this case. So whilst this is one way to do it, it's definitely not the fastest and best. The easiest way to do it is up here in the composition window. You can see these red bars on the left and the right hand side of the text. These are indeed the range selectors themselves. So if we grab the right hand one here and drag it all the way over so it sits just to the edge of the letter P, you'll see that all the other letters have now returned to their original state because they are not selected anymore. Only this area inside the range selector of animator 1 is going to be affected by position and wiggle. So if you now scrub through the timeline, you can see that you have now indeed controlled the position movement of those 4 characters independent of everything else. So you can see that by careful control of range selection, you could apply multiple animations to a single block of text just by using multiple animators, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We want to apply a rotation animation to these letters and also a fade between different colors on this one, so we need to use multiple animators. Now that can get quite confusing if you have many different animators in the timeline and they're simply called animator 1, 2, 3, and so on. Well, animators can also be named just as easily as you can name a layer or a mask inside of After Effects. Simply click on the word animator 1, let's hit return or enter on the keyboard to access the name, and then simply call this one jump. Just press return again when you're done, and that animator now has its own name.